Okay, part two. Part two is about the mechanical layers of the Earth. Okay, so the mechanical layers of the Earth. Let me put this into full screen. So the mechanical layers of the Earth are five. So you have the lithosphere, asthenosphere, mesosphere, outer core, and inner core. Now, if you remember, the compositional layers in video one is made up of core, mantle, and the crust. So only three. But the mechanical layers, now we have five: lithosphere, asthenosphere, mesosphere, outer core, and inner core. Now, the best way to go about discussing how they are different is to look at the transition from compositional to mechanical layers. By the way, this slide that I'm showing you now, the chemical layers are also called compositional layers, while the mechanical layers are also called physical layers for obvious reasons of course. Now, in the compositional layer, you have core, but in the mechanical layers, you have inner core and outer core. Okay, so that's a very smooth transition. All you do is you have the core, and then you divide that into inner and outer. Okay, that's it. Uh, that's no big deal. What is confusing is this next part when you transition from mantle and crust into the uh, three parts of three other layers of the physical categorization. So, uh, the mantle you see here, that mantle is divided into three parts. Okay, so the mantle is divided into three parts. Those three parts are the uppermost rigid mantle, and then you have the asthenosphere below that, and then you have the mesosphere. Okay, so um, I don't know if I have it here. Okay, so what's confusing is like this: that three layers of the mantle, uppermost rigid, asthenosphere, and mesosphere, those two, that's not confusing because those two are indeed the mechanical layers. The mesosphere here, the bottom one. Then on top of that is the asthenosphere. What is confusing is this part, the lithosphere, because the lithosphere is now made up of two parts, the crust and the uppermost mantle. Okay, so again, to recap, you have the crust, you have the mantle, but the mantle is divided into three, and then the crust plus the first part of the mantle. When scientists observe them, they notice that these two are always stuck together. They are moving as one. They have the same behavior. Now, compositionally, they are different. This is made up of more silicates. This is made up of less silicates. After all, this is the crust and that's the mantle. But physically speaking, mechanically speaking, both of them are solid and both of them are stuck together and they move as one. And so scientists have no choice but to call them as lithosphere. So be careful. Most students have a difficulty understanding this because they think that the crust is equivalent to the lithosphere. No, 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 no. The crust is simply one part of the lithosphere. The lithosphere is the crust plus the uppermost part of the mantle. So if you notice here, the lithosphere is a little bit more thick compared to the crust because it takes in the crust plus the uppermost layer of the mantle. Okay? Now, in terms of the basis for these layers, it's because of the phase or the physical characteristics. So, number one is the lithosphere. So, the lithosphere, as I mentioned a while back, the crust is solid. The uppermost rigid mantle is also solid. So they move together, and together they form a solid block. So that is the lithosphere. Now, the asthenosphere below it is curious because the asthenosphere below it is partially melted just because it becomes hotter as you go down towards the center of the earth. And so it's partially melted. So technically, it still is solid, but because it's partially melted, it kind of flows very slowly like a fluid. So uh, we have a term for that. That term is called plasticity. So we say that the asthenosphere has some plasticity. It is solid, but it's partially uh, fluid. Now the mesosphere is solid, right? Then the outer core is liquid, and then the inner core is again solid. So again, we have this different properties in each layer. Solid lithosphere, plastic asthenosphere, solid mesosphere, liquid outer core, and then solid inner core. Okay? So that's the reason why we name the five different layers, because of their different characteristics in terms of whether they are solid, they are plastic, or they are liquid. Okay, now we will discuss a little bit more on why the mesosphere and the inner core are solid and why the outer core is liquid on the next video. Okay, so with that we end this video, and you will watch the next video after this.